She did tell me. She did tell me.
No worries. No worries. Thanks, mate. You take care.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
See you. Bye. I might, Batesy, I might get you to unmute just so I can bounce off you.
Yes,
just
mate.
Because
how are you, buddy?
Good, mate. Yourself. It's just
excellent.
That's the way. That's because you'd be a pretty accurate barometer of the rest of the team, as well. So in terms of buyer work, I know what Dave just mentioned, but what, like in the field, what are the key takeaways we're really after, or learnings that we're really after, and what are some of the challenges like day to day that we're faced, with buyer work in primarily?
I think. Well, Rosie and I try and concentrate on this. I think buyer work in this marketplace is paramount, especially with more listings coming to the market, and not as many buyers coming through open homes. It's imperative that we work with these buyers and know our stock. So we've made some changes, Rosie and I, in our team over the last week, which hopefully will give us better product knowledge.
Right.
So I think
what's an example of the change that you might have made?
Well, what I've told Rosie to do now, like we were getting Lauren to do our photo shoots and that type of thing for all our new listings. So what we're doing now is Rosie is going to do those and build a bit of rapport with the vendor, but also we do what is called a web book, which has fairly detailed information about the property. So what that's going to do is going to give Rosie very good product knowledge about each individual property that we list. So when she's talking to buyers, she can basically sell these properties over the phone and encourage the inspections. So
okay. And so you're finding there's obviously less buyers coming through your opens, and also less buyers engaging in terms of taking the next step as well. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Look, this is obviously very common across the entire market. Like, so there's no geographical discrimination with this challenge at the moment. All right. So my recommendations are a few things, right? So number one, what you want to be doing is ensuring that you're only engaging with buyers that are at chapter 9 or 10 of their buying journey, not chapters 1 or 2. What I mean by that is we all know, because we've met them, that there's buyers that literally roll out of bed on a Saturday, grab a cup of coffee, and then start going to open for inspections and start indulging us with asking for contracts. And they've never spoken to a broker or a bank or anything. All they've decided is that they should start looking to buy a property, right? Whether it's first home, downsizing, upsizing, or whatever. That'd be chapter 1 for me as an extreme. And then there's chapter 10, which are people that have missed out on 4 properties and are literally got a 66W in their back pocket, ready to pounce on something the minute it comes up. Do you know what I mean? So they're the 2 extremes. Now, what I'm finding at the moment, there are a lot of agents that are wasting a lot of time with buyers that are not qualified. Okay. Now, this is even more important in a market where there's just less buyers. So it means that we need to be vigilant, like hyper vigilant around buyer qualification. Now, what does that look like? Well, it's very easy. You really simply need to be asking very direct questions. So, I was talking to someone yesterday, coaching someone, and they were like, well, what do I say if we want, say, $1 million on a property and someone's only suggesting, 850 and the owner would never take that, Well, firstly, before you invest another moment in that, firstly, you've got to qualify. Is it the property that you subjectively think is worth 850, or is it your finance which is maxed out at that level? Which one is it? Because frankly, like if it's the finance and they just simply are not going to be able to have the capacity for that type of property, there's no script or dialogue or anything you could do or say that's going to change that, right? But if they subjectively feel that the property is just not worth what you're after, but they do have the capacity to pay it, well, then you can actually dig deeper and invest a little bit more time, effort, and energy into talking about comparable sales, relevant sales, current listings, how you determine the value, what's the opportunity cost of not buying it based on how long you've been looking and how many properties you actually liked, etc. So I think that in itself is so important as a step 1, because I'm talking to so many agents at the moment that are spinning wheels, having long, unnecessary conversations with buyers that are not going to do anything anyway. So they're trying to be an alchemist, which is basically turn stone into gold. It's just not going to happen, right? So firstly, qualify if there's a gap in price from the buyer. Is it a budget issue, or is it your subjective value on the property? So one's obviously very objective. Budget means they just can't, even if they wanted to, they can't increase. The other one is subjective, which is their opinion, which they're entitled to. And that the latter is where you can dig deeper and push harder if you need to. Okay. So qualifying that is absolutely critical. Qualifying at what stage of the journey they are. So when we talk about what stage of the journey, and hopefully they're at chapter 9 or 10, well, the way you're gonna decipher that is by asking very direct questions, which is, I understand that you're interested in this, and I know you've made an offer, but please, before we go any further, if we agree on a price, are you in a position to move forward unconditionally? Is there what would be stopping you? Is it a building inspection? Is it evaluate? What actually would stop you? So that's critical. The other thing is when you're reporting to your vendors, you want to be able to actually be really honest with the buyer and say, hey, I'm catching up with my seller tomorrow, or I'm speaking to him tonight. He or she has asked me to report really clearly around who is a buyer that, regardless of price, that can move forward if we do agree on a price. That's the most important thing that they've asked me to do. Okay, because otherwise you get bogged down in this discussion on price, but it may not even be relevant because the buyer's not even there. Do you know what I mean, Batesy? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, mate. Yep.
Yeah. So I think over qualifying the buyer by asking direct questions, because if you ask vague questions, you'll get vague responses. Or in the so-called boom that we experienced in the last couple of years, you could just what I call guide and guess. So you'd have a price guide, You just guess that if they took a contract, they're at least 50 grand above that, and then you would report to your owner accordingly. You can't get away with that anymore. So all sins were forgiven in that abnormal market, which it was abnormal. This is a normal market, by the way. So asking very direct questions at the risk of actually prying, and even at the risk of being too direct. I don't think you can be too direct. Because what you got to remember, guys, is we're a consignment model. We're not a fee-for-service model. What I mean by that is we're not like a doctor, lawyer, accountant who get paid per hour. Like, we get paid only if we not just list a property, but actually sell it. So that means everything we do up to the point of selling it, we're actually working for free, right? So those hours you're investing have to be with hyper qualified buyers, number one, and number two, with people that own real estate who you can be a little bit more flexible with, because someone may not be ready to sell for 6-12 months. That's still a valuable conversation and meeting to have, right? Because that means you're still progressing them. But you can't have that same philosophy with buyers. You have to be hyper vigilant. And I'm not suggesting you're rude to them, but you say, look, my owner has asked me, they've invested $4,000 in advertising. They've asked me to only let them know about buyers, regardless of price, who are ready to sign a contract unconditionally if we agree on price. Are you in a position to do that? Yes or no? So it's very binary, black or there's no in between. If it's no, I completely understand that, Greg. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here to help you, when you're ready. No problem. So we're not being rude. And the other part of it is, if you do ask the question, and you genuinely think it's worth $1 million, and they genuinely say they only think it's worth 850, and you say, is it the property or your budget? And if they say it's the budget, just say, look, I respect that. And what I'll do is I'll put you on my list and send you properties that are more suitable, because this one's not the one. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be able to have the guts to actually have that type of direct conversation as well. And that's not rude. That's just being transparent. I'd rather have that conversation if I was a buyer than be led on by an agent to think that I'm a chance to buy it. Look, I get that if someone's suggesting 900, they've probably got more to spend. I'm not saying dismiss every buyer who's lowballing you, but like if there's a massive gap and it is a budget issue, you've got to be able to qualify which way. What else in terms of buyers is Batesy, are we finding
Mate, it's probably extracting the offers from buyers too.
Yeah.
Like, buyers are talking themselves out of making offers because of interest rate rises, change of government, all that sort of thing. What's some of the dialogue you can use with these buyers?
Yeah, really good question. So look, again, we can't be an alchemist, which is someone who turns stone into gold. So will there be some buyers who you'll meet that'll just say, you know what, I'm an opportunist. I'm going to wait for interest rates to go up because I reckon the market's going to drop. And no matter what you do or say, there's no script or dialogue in the world that's going to change their mind, right? However, there's some buyers who are a bit ambivalent, right? Who say, look, to be honest, I'm a bit confused. Like, I know that there's been a change of government. They're talking about, inflation. They're talking about possible recession. They're talking about 25% correction. I heard in the paper, all that sort of thing. Just say to them, look, what does Plan B look like for you? So what's your current? I'm renting. Okay. If you're renting, did you know that if we've just been through a sales boom the last couple of years, we're actually going through a rental boom at the moment. So what's the opportunity cost of not buying, which is to pay a higher rent, right? And less opportunity to lock in, if you want to, on some sort of fixed interest rate, because frankly, if you were wanting to pick the absolute, best time to get a home loan, you've already missed it anyway, because fixed interest rates have gone up, 9 times in 6 months, right? So like, you've already missed that anyway. What you're actually hoping to do is pick the bottom of the market, find a house that you actually like, even though you've been looking for 3 months and they've only liked 4 and in 3 months, and get a good deal. Just say, look, the opportunity cost, given that you're renting at the moment, I think is too high. What's another scenario? They might be like, well, I'm downsizing and, the value of my house has sort of gone down. Well, let's just focus not so much on what the value of your house is and what the next purchase is. Can you achieve what you want to achieve with an $800,000 changeover? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, good. So whether the numbers are 2 million and 1.2 or 1.8 and $1 million, it doesn't really matter. Like 800,000 was the motivation for you. So you could give some money to kids, so you could pay down some debt and you can travel, for example, right? So that still works for you, right? The 800, yeah, it does. Okay, good. If it's upside, like I'm just trying to think of every possible scenario, the reason people buy. If it's upsizing, if someone needs an extra bedroom, they need an extra bedroom. There's nothing there. If they've got a growing family, their options are either to extend where they are and building costs are ridiculous, or get a bigger piece of land where they can adopt more of a long-term view. If it's an investment and they're offering resistance, just say this. I don't think there's been an actual better time in the last couple of years to buy an investment property. Yields have gone up a notch, and sure, I understand interest rates are sort of going there as well. But what's plan B? I mean, you're obviously being advised to buy an investment property through your accountant because you're paying too much tax. So where else do you put your money? In the stock market, really? Do you want to be checking that every day just to see how where in property we know over a 10-year period, then you don't have to monitor the market. So I suppose what I'm trying to get to, Greg, when someone offers that resistance, always identify what the alternative looks like for them, and to be honest with you, the alternative is never as good. It's never as good than buying property. But you could say all of that, and there'll still be people that say, "Oh no, I'll wait." And you could facetiously say, "Yeah, I spoke to buyers, 2.5 years ago that said they'll wait, and now the market's gone up 25%." Or you could say, COVID was meant to be Armageddon, both financially, economically, and globally, and all we saw was double-digit growth year on year. So there's a lot of little nuggets that you can throw in there, but at the end of the day, you've still got to qualify people that want to transact, because if you go to realestateindomain.com, there's still deals happening every day, right? There's still listings. So there's still people trading. Is there going to be some owners you'll never be able to convince? Yes. Is there going to be some buyers you'll never be able to convince? Yes. Is this the market where you need to overlist because you're actually going to have to hand back 2 or 3 out of every 10? Yes. I'm doing it in my team, so I'm still an active agent as well. My list to sell ratio for the last 2-3 years was like 90 to 100%. Now it's like 70-80%. I've had to hand a few back. It's not great, but that's just the reality of it. I remember when I first got into real estate, pre-internet and whatever, you'd probably need to list 10 to sell 5 or 6, so it's not that bad. So the people that list the most and that overlist will survive this as a lot better than others,
And mate, what's some of the tasks that your team do in dealing with buyers that haven't bought? What's the daily phone calls look like and the conversations?
Good question. So there's two camps as far as the buyers are concerned, right? So in one bucket, we've got buyers that are on our listing, so campaign buyers, if you want to call them that. So people that have expressed interest in one of your properties. And then the second bucket would be just hot buyers generally that you're dealing with, that you can either introduce one of your colleagues' property to, or try and even, work with other agents on, or just try and sell them something off market or whatever. So firstly, the campaign buyers, the buyers that are interested in your property, for the last couple of years, all you needed to do, Batesy, was call them once a week. You're leading up to either an auction or a for sale situation, doesn't matter. or maybe twice a week and say, hey, you're still interested? You're going to come to the auction? You're going to make an offer? Yep. You got your finance sorted? Yep. Okay, all good. That was probably the extent of it, right? These days, the conversations we're having with campaign buyers is, Greg, I noticed you've asked for a copy of the contract. That's a great first step. However, I'm obliged to report back to my client about genuine buyers who are ready to transact, okay? And I'm finding that asking for a contract is a great first step, but it literally is the first step. So what I'm asking you is, are you intending to come back for another inspection? Are you intending to do a strata or a pest inspection or building inspection? Are you intending on making any changes to the contract? Is your finance subject to evaluation? If so, when's that going to happen? So they're the gateways or the metrics, if you like, that we've created for ourselves. So rather than just issuing 5 contracts and telling your vendor you got 5 buyers, that's not going to cut it anymore. So they're going to need to, the buyers are going to need to satisfy 4 or 5 of our qualifying metrics, if you like, rather than just one, if that makes sense, you know. And if they're vague about any of those responses, it means they're not serious. It means they're not serious. The other thing is, you know, getting to a point where buyers can produce unconditional offers. Like, and I know that buyers say, oh no, well, let's see what happens first and all that. I mean, you at some point you need to stick to a certain process, because as you know, you can get an offer on an email. You can forward that email to the owner. It inflates the owner's expectations. The buyer doesn't go ahead, and suddenly you're stuck with an optimistic vendor based on an offer that didn't even happen. Do you know what I mean? So I think focusing heavily on unconditional offers is absolutely critical. And then when you talk about, you know, just your general hot buyer list, I think with that, you know, I would only be dealing with half a dozen at a time. I think whoever deludes themselves that they can work with 20 or 30 buyers, I think is a mistake. You can definitely put a lot of people into your buyer alert system and send them emails and SMSs, but in terms of closely working with buyers, I think half a dozen at a time. And if you could be a little bit biased towards people that have got something to sell straight after they buy, that would be nice as well. But not to mention, just effectively adopt these people as your clients, as if you're a buyer's agent, and do everything a buyer's agent would do, but without expecting any remuneration, because the sort of referrals you get off the back of that, or potentially off-market sales, is pretty high. So yeah, we're sort of sticking to half a dozen people, and we're providing them, Greg, almost like vendor-like service, if you know what I mean. So speaking to them a few times a week, sending them email updates about what's come on the market, maybe even catching up with them on a regular basis. So you can only really do that with a few people, but they've got to be like, you know, white hot buyers, and you'll get a lot of referrals out of that as well.
Yeah, cool. Excellent.
All right.
Well, mate, there are all the questions I had.
Anyone else, guys? Just about general buyer work or anything in particular? All good. Yeah, how's that? We can even go on the chat. I think there's a chat thing if you want to do that. But is that, you happy with that, Greg?
Yeah, mate, that's all good. Thanks again, mate.
Well,
Adrian, it's Alison.
Yes,
hello.
yes.
Good,
Hi,
good
Alison.
morning.
Hi.
Good
Hi.
morning. What about in this market where buyers are a little more scarce, and we are getting lighter numbers through open homes, but then the inspections by appointment through the week, I think, are really important to show that you know, you haven't forgotten about them.
Yeah,
what about?
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't want to take a buyer through the property just for the sake of taking a buyer through the property.
Definitely.
And I suppose there's some dialogue in around what you've just spoken about with Greg in terms of qualifying these buyers without, because I mean, they might say, yeah, but I want to see it, but you don't want to. I don't want to feel like I don't want to show it to them, but I don't want to waste my time and the vendor's time. Does that make sense?
I get it. It does. And this is where what I mentioned about, risking being too direct is you just have to do that, because and you can always put it on the vendor, Alison. So you can say, look, I understand you want to have a look through, and I'd love to show you. My owner has provided me with very direct instructions at the moment, given that they've got a family and they've got to get the house ready, that they only want me to show people that if we did reach an agreement on price, that you're ready to proceed. So meaning that you've got unconditional finance ready to go. So it's pretty binary, the response to that. It's not. It shouldn't be. Well, it depends on the property, because that's irrelevant. Because the reality is, Alison, like if you show that all these buyers through and they're not serious, then that's like a couple of hours or more per week that you could be prospecting for more listings, And as I just said, what the solution to this current market we're finding ourselves in, where there's lower qualified buyers, is to overlist, and you have to accept that you might only sell 7 out of every 10 that you list. So it needs to mean and be that you're only working with buyers that are ready to transact. And there are buyers ready to transact. Otherwise, no sales would occur in your market, right? But you really need to overqualify everyone you're talking to, because, as I said, there are buyers literally at chapters 1, 2, or 3 in their buying journey who just crawl out of bed, grab a cup of coffee, go to an open house, and ask you for a copy of the contract, and they know nothing about buying or finance or anything. So I'm not saying be rude to those people, but qualify that that's what stage of the journey they're at, and say, look, when I'm happy to put you on my buyer list when you're ready, more than happy to work with you. My owner in this particular case has only asked me to deal with people that are ready to transact regardless of price. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
And look, I think people respect that. They respect it. You might get 1 or 2 out of 10 that are like, oh, well, that's your job to show me through. And, well, not really. Like, I'm just got to follow my owner's instructions. And that's what they've asked me to do. Because remember what I said before, we're working for free. Effectively, we're working every hour we invest until we actually sell a property, not even list a property. We're working for free. So we need to make sure that every hour we invest is either with an overqualified buyer or someone that owns property that could sell at some point. We can be a little bit more flexible with pipeline sellers and deal with people that are not ready as yet, but not with buyers. It's just, otherwise we're just going to otherwise we just become buyers agents and not get paid. It's not what it's about. So yeah, it's really, really critical market to be able to do that in, All righty. Anything else, Greg, your team that you can think of?
Anyone else got any questions?
All good. All good.
Thanks, Bowie.
Yeah. No worries, guys. Well, any queries, just email me or give me a buzz or whatever if you guys think of anything. But just be really vigilant about buyer work. It's important, but make sure you curate your list and only deal with qualified people, and overlist as a solution to this issue that we're facing at the moment. Yeah.
Excellent, mate. Thanks, buddy.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Have a good week.
Take care.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye. Pleasure. Bye-bye.